Welcome to the Trumpet of the last few days. Hi, I'm Stanley Farrar.
And I'm Robert Farrar.
And I'm Joshua Farrar. See, it all works better when we have our standard order.
Well, they've taken and finally found a way to take and put a stop to these riots, but I bet the majority of states won't cooperate.
There's a couple of ways that I can think of to do it, none of which are legal, but there's a couple of ways that I've thought.
I mean, the most legal way to do it is the insurrection, invoking insurrection, then correct.
Oh, like I said, my thought was an entirely illegal way of using the National Guard to herd them into the forest fires.
We're not trying to kill all the rioters.
Like I said, completely illegal method.
Well, in Portland, the president took and went through and deputized all the police there to the feds.
Mm-hmm. So now it's no longer under the district DA to prosecute them. It's federal charges.
Yep.
That's right. See, before the DA wasn't pressing any charges. She refused to press charges. No, even for murder.
Mm-hmm.
But they've got some interesting situations here because the leaders of the riots aren't from Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
So they're being arrested and then being charged with terrorist activities across state lines. Federal offense.
Yeah.
45 to life. And Barr's looking into charging him with sedition, which is the death penalty.
It's one way to end things definitively.
Since they rounded up the leaders and slapped the federal charges on them, the riots in Portland ended. They stopped overnight. Now, some others that sprang up in the middle of the nation were arrested. They came to their homes by looking at the videos, identified who they were, arrested them, and are now and for those who are local, and for those that aren't local, they took and tracked them down and arrested them, and have slapped federal charges on them. Just as soon as they got them into the system, the feds stepped in and said, "They're ours now. Don't even bother giving them to the local district attorney."
Mm-hmm.
The judge came back with $1 million bail on several of them. They're all either being held without bond or being held under $1 million. And guess what? The riots stopped. When they enforced the law, the riots stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Funny how that works.
All these Democrat cities,
these Democrat cities
have been taking. Yeah, they're taking and supporting the riots in these Democrat cities, and the district attorneys have been taken and purposefully not pressing charges but turning them loose.
Mm-hmm.
I found out yesterday that a large portion of them received funding from George Soros to get into office.
Still don't know how.
So they're being back
so much. Still have.
You cut out at the very end there.
Well, he is so. Yeah, Robert.
I don't understand how that man can spend so much and still have money left. Seems like every shady activity is funded by George Soros.
He must have his fingers into so many crooked things. It's unreal.
I don't know. Maybe they need to Al
Because
Capone him.
he's a multi. They probably do, but he's a multi-billionaire, and well, Fox News won't even talk about him. He's considered verboten in Fox News.
Mm-hmm.
They won't even mention him. In fact, the former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, mentioned that he was funding these district attorneys, and they pulled Newt Gingrich from the show. They cut him off and told him, you don't talk about George Soros.
And Fox. It's kind of
Fox
funny
News.
considering Fox is the most trustworthy of the media organizations at this point.
Of the mainstream.
Yeah.
But
and yet
that almost sounds mob-like.
They still won't cross him. Mm-hmm.
And for the audience who doesn't know what I was referencing, Al Capone was arrested for tax evasion, specifically on an article of the tax law that states that he has to claim income from illegal sources.
That is a clever law.
And because because Al Capone at the time was claiming zero income, despite all the evidence of all the outgoing money he had, which means he would have to have some form of income, they were able to get him under that statute.
Yeah. And they probably could get George Soros under that statute. But I think they could get George Soros for sedition.
Yeah.
He's a major funder of Black Lives Matter, which has been proven to be a terrorist organization.
Yeah.
He's a major funder of many communist causes. He is supporting numerous organizations that are corrupt and criminal.
Yeah.
They should be able to lock him up. But he's not a citizen of anywhere.
Is he a sovereign citizen?
What
Or
was
do you
that?
know? Is he a sovereign citizen, or do you know?
That's what he claims.
So, once again, for the audience, and maybe for Robert, because I'm not sure if he knows this, but a sovereign citizen is someone who has basically rescinded their citizenship to the United States, claiming that they are a citizenship of themselves, where they only owe loyalty to themselves. On a technicality, these people don't have to pay taxes because they're not subject to tax law because they neither pay in nor receive from the benefits of the tax programs. It's the way they function.
It's also not federally recognized, and just the act of opting out of Social Security alone is a federal crime.
He claims to be a citizen of the world. So therefore he feels he can manipulate all the world's governments, trying to make them all socialists. He has had his fingers in every major Western country's elections for years.
How old is he at this point, anyway?
Oh, he's got to be in his 80s or 90s. He's ancient. He got most of his money during the Nazi Germany. So
yeah,
I've heard it stated that he was the living embodiment of the Nazi stereotype for Jews.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they let him live?
He got his money by selling the Jews to them.
Yeah, He's not he is a Jew, but he's not a practicing Jew. So,
Yeah,
and
but
yes, he betrayed his own people to the Nazis.
but they didn't care about whether or not they were practicing. They just cared if they were Jews.
They certainly cared whether or not you helped the party or not.
That
On a technicality,
Eh,
Hitler had Jewish blood.
yeah. But he became a very strong proponent of communism after the war.
after the socialist experiment he backed failed.
Well, the only
Yeah.
people who really profit from communism are the people who fund it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Usually they end up getting their heads chopped.
Apparently, he's figured out the way
Unless
to
you're like
avoid
George
that.
Soros
Yeah,
and
evidently.
jump from country to country.
You just have
But
to
he
not be in the country that's having its communist revolution at the time. Fund it from the
Touche.
distance.
But what happens when you run out of communist country?
They collapse, and you can fund a new communist revolution.
He he expects to be on the top.
Yeah, but that never happened. The wealthy are the ones who get
The
targeted.
kingmaker. Actually, the wealthy are
middle
not the
class are the
ones
ones
that
who
the
get
most
targeted.
recent communist revolutions have been targeting, which is kind of unusual, being that's what the whole point is supposed to be. If they fund the party, they turn a blind eye.
It's been the middle class that's been the target of the
Yeah, but
the
the whole
communist
point of
revolution.
taking out the middle class is to overthrow the upper class.
Yeah, that's true.
Pulling the rug out from underneath them.
That's what they state, but there is often a very big difference between what you say and what you do. Many
Well, yeah.
times.
I mean, Marxism, and then you look at Marx himself.
Yeah, Marx himself was the very type of person that he would have been trying to overthrow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was. But the funny thing is, all of these Marxists, they follow what Marx did and not what he said.
Yeah. Well, if you look at it, almost all these Marxists that are rising up to take and carry forth the revolution that's going through our country, they're all rich kids. A bunch of spoiled rich kids.
Yeah.
They may be of various ethnic backgrounds, but they're still a bunch of spoiled rich kids. If they weren't, they wouldn't be able to have the time or the money to go out and riot.
See,
because Black Lives Matter is not paying them all.
there is there's a French term. I'm not sure if I can pronounce it correctly, but it's like noble obligant. It's the obligation of the nobles. Is what it basically roughly translates to. After that terrible attempt to pronounce it, I'm not even going to.
Quality French.
Noblesse obligare.
Yeah, but
I believe
basically they literally believe in that statement of it is their obligation as the privileged to improve the lives of others by ruining them, just like nobles have throughout all of time.
Pretty much, yeah.
Actually, I watched a discussion by a man who came out of the Democrat Party confronting a Black Lives Matter individual, and he was giving the person stats and figures, and they just kept coming back, white privilege, white privilege, white privilege. And finally, they got mad, and they took and stated that it was their obligation as white people to take and raise these
And that is white
ethnic
privilege.
groups up.
That they accuse all white people of having white privilege, but believe it or not, they're the privileged ones. They're the ones with the psychopathy.
Yes.
And it ties exactly into what I just described there.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It fits perfect. And that's why I mentioned it, because it fits so well. It actually describes the situation. It's like one white Black Lives Matter protester was screaming at a black woman, and because she disagreed with them, how dare she take and not let them take control of her life?
How dare she not roll over for the self-appointed noble class?
Yeah.
Well, they have to be self-appointed in America.
What is the
There
United
is
States?
no.
We're not supposed to.
Yeah, exactly.
But on top of that, they have to be the noble class. They have to be the ones on top. They have to be privileged and better than you, or otherwise their entire argument falls apart. It's like some weird reverse psychology attempt of convincing you that they're the rightful ruler.
It's kind of odd, because it's kind of like Hitler with the Nazis.
Yeah.
He went through and convinced the German people that the ultimate race was a bunch of light-skinned, blue-eyed, blonde-haired, Germanic people.
Yeah.
And
proceeded to possess none of those traits.
And he possessed none of those traits.
Except for blue eyes.
None of them.
He had
except
the blue eyes. That's all he had, was the blue eyes.
And yet he says, okay, you are the superior people, therefore I should be in charge. And they bought it. And that's essentially what these people are doing too. They're saying, oh, whites are just the most horrible things. They're responsible for all the wickedness and evil of the world. Therefore, you should let whites like us take and fix you. It's like, what? That don't make sense. If you believe what you're saying, then you need to get out of the way.
Yeah.
And it's always is women under the age of 35.
There are plenty over the age of 35. Pelosi, for example.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. I'm talking about out there in the streets.
Yeah.
Pelosi wouldn't get out in the street. She'd rather have someone else do the work for her.
I
talk
believe,
about privileged. Yeah, she said.
I believe the common term for the ones over the age of 35 is Karen these days.
Yes, that is the common.
Yeah. But she has to sit back in her mansion in San Francisco during the lockdown and talk about, there's no problem with the lockdown. Everybody is able to get along and do great things. Look here. And she went through it, and this is my kitchen. She pulls open the freezer door. It's loaded with the most expensive ice cream in the country. Just packed full of it. See, we're not even having a shortage on food. And it's like, you're rich. How does that compare to everybody else? Of course, she doesn't need to take in work. She is the wealthy.
So, I am probably the best off fiscally out of our immediate family, not counting the one that we know really nothing about his financial situation because he never talks to us.
Actually, I do.
Okay, but I don't know anything about his financial situation, so I can't really comment on him. But exceptionizing him because of that, no data, because of the lack of data, I'm probably the best off of our immediate family. In my fridge,
probably
currently, I have a singular steak that I haven't gotten around to cooking yet. A singular package of bacon. A singular tub of butter that is halfway used already. Half a box of fudgesicles. And half a box of Coca-Cola. and that is all I possess in my fridge.
Well,
how's your
your mother
pantry
would
doing?
never stand for that.
Oh, my pantry is even more barren.
Your mother would never stand for it if I did that.
My
I was
my
I
pantry
was talking.
consists of a box of about 3/4 of the way full of mashed potato flakes.
See, here's the thing. I was talking to someone about the a pantry came up and somebody was like, "You had a pantry growing up?" Josh, just face it. You're privileged. You have a pantry.
I don't have a pantry though. In fact, the funny thing is, although I said that my pantry consists of a box 3/4 of the way full of mashed potato flakes, that box I actually keep in the fridge, and that's just to keep the rats from getting to it.
Oh, well, if you we used to have a pantry before the house was destroyed. We used to have a pantry. Uh, but if you when you look at these privileged mindsets, the politicians think they're royalty,
Yeah.
and a lot of the wealthy think they're royalty,
Even worse, they
and
think
these
that they're
spoiled brats,
entitled to their political positions.
and these spoiled brats that are out here causing all the trouble, uh, have been pampered so much they think that they are some kind of a royal, and we don't have nobility in the United States.
Never have.
In fact, that's kind of one of the
Well, before
stipulations.
there was a United States.
Well, then it wasn't the United
That's
States, now was it?
that's one of the stipulations of becoming
No.
a citizen of the United States. You have to give up all royal titles. But people want to play being king.
Yeah. Now let's take and shift gears and look at the governor of Pennsylvania.
Ah, okay. Now that I've created a sizable
Robert, would
section.
you like to enlighten us?
So,
Yes, I had to do a very bold transition there with you having to cut so much.
Oh, yeah, considering we've gone so far off topic.
after the
Yeah.
In that
coronavirus
section of
pan-
outtakes the world shall never see.
after the coronavirus pandemic really hit sway in the U.S., there was a big move to lock down the entire country. Now, not the entire country did lock down. After all, Oklahoma and I think South Dakota didn't lock down. But most states locked down. Included in these states is Pennsylvania, which a court decision recently came down saying that the governor's move to lock down the state was unconstitutional. This is a federal court, mind. And in that argument, they pointed out that a crisis does not constitute the suspension of the Constitution. On the contrary, the Constitution was written during a time of crisis, and what it holds is all the more apt during time of crisis. It also holds that a governor cannot force a suspension of the constitutional rights for the long term. Now, admittedly, that's a fairly ambiguous concept, especially legally, except that he stated that 6 months is too long. And it's been over 6 months since the lockdown. And the governor in his writ, essentially stated that he can reimpose lockdown whenever he wants. Which you can understand why that's a problem, because it means that the state of emergency can effectively never end, as long as he wants to continue. Giving him vast amounts of power over his state.
Anyone remember the plot of Episode 3 of Star Wars?
No. Who remembers the plot
the
of
Emperor
that trilogy?
Episode 3 was quite
took
popular. I don't know what you're
over.
talking about. They instituted
talking about
emergency powers to the Chancellor in a time of crisis.
That's right.
In order to better respond to the crisis. And using said emergency powers, he dissolved the Senate and instituted himself as emperor. And extended those emergency powers indefinitely.
Which is the move of dictators everywhere. And really, the Pennsylvania governor was one step away from that. He just hadn't dissolved the Congress.
Mm-hmm.
Nor could he, because then he'd have a federal crackdown. But
in Michigan, the governor ignored the Congress. They told her she couldn't extend her executive order to lock the state down, and she did it anyway.
then it shouldn't have been enforced.
But it was.
But what we've got is a bunch of little we've got a bunch of little dictators running all the states.
A whole bunch of them. Primarily.
I need that image out of my head.
Little dictators?
So imagine that, but to the My Little Ponies theme, and you'll understand why I need that image out of my head.
It's bad that my mind threw in Hitler.
My mind definitely had Hitler sitting on a rainbow.
I was thinking about Hitler and Napoleon. Both little dictators.
Yeah. But mine also had Saddam Hussein and a couple others on there. Stalin.
But Stalin wasn't little, though.
That's not the point.
That's not the point, though. And the cartoon franchise of My Little Dictator, they don't have to be little. They can be chibi sized.
My Little Dictator. Okay.
Yeah.
You can have a lot of fun with that.
Is it bad that
I'm surprised Steven Crowder hasn't done it already, though.
I'm surprised if you pitched that to Adult Swim, they'd take it up.
I bet they would.
Probably.
Oh.
Or at least as a throwaway gag in another one of their shows.
Yeah. As you take and you look at the precedent, though, that would right now, it's going to affect the other states. But once it's appealed, if it holds up on appeal, it will take and affect the entire nation.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to appeal.
Now, Trump recently Trump recently added a new person to his CDC people. And this particular doctor, who's a epidemiologist, a specialist on epidemics. Yeah, he's a specialist on epidemics, and he stated that So what kind of lunacy is this? You don't lock down the country for an epidemic. You take the most vulnerable people and you take and isolate them and the sick. You don't take and lock the whole country down. That's irrational.
Yeah, well, I mean, people were arguing that from the start. Did it?
They've got a new doctor on the panel that's advising the president the exact opposite of what Fauci has been saying.
It's about time. Fauci had such an obvious political agenda.
And yes, my computer kicked me off the internet.
Yeah, I figured it did. And then we just sat here
Oh,
saying rude things about you while you were gone.
You want us to kick you? Is that what you want us to do? Well, we can do that.
But all of the various advisors is what these governors are going by off of Fauci and some of these other doctors that have an agenda. And one of the congressmen's come out and said that they had to keep the country locked down and so that the economy couldn't recover or else Trump would win.
That was
So
AOC,
it's
wasn't it?
not because I don't remember. It was one of the crew.
Was
Probably was AOC, but so their goal has nothing to do with disease. It has everything to do with getting power.
But this case has laid down a good precedent, and if I don't know how many states have been sued for the lockdown, probably quite a few. But
if they keep it locked down longer, then a few more are going to do it.
But if those states go to court before the appeal, then the precedent may already be set. And we could have a big win for freedom.
Okay, where were we?
The precedent may already be set.
Yeah.
Now, it can easily be overturned by an appeal. But
This is quite a day. You know that?
Oh my.
You're going to have your hands full editing this one.
Oh yeah. We may want to end this one sooner than normal because of all this stuff that's going on.
yeah.
Okay.
The precedent can easily be overturned based on the appeal decision. And it may end up going all the way to the Supreme Court.
If it goes all the way to the Supreme Court, then that'll set a precedent that can't be reversed easily.
Not easy.
Well, it takes the Supreme Court to overturn it.
Yeah, and the Supreme Court's very reluctant to overturn its own.
I wonder where the yeller went since we brushed our teeth with precedent.
It went all over the place, believe it or not, because that's what happens with precedent. When you value precedent over the actual rule of law, which they do.
My. There's probably like 0.001% of people in general who would get the reference I just made, and even less for our specific audience.
I thought it was great.
So, if you liked that really old commercial reference, feel free to hit the like button. If you didn't, or just didn't understand it, feel free to hit the dislike button. Feel free to subscribe and ring the bell so you can get notifications as well. And feel free to drop a comment in the comment section down below. If it's dissenting from our point of view, we get that, we understand, but we will probably argue with you anyway. Anybody have anything else they want to say?
be sure to share with your friends, because the more people that watch, the more YouTube will share it with others.
Oh, and if you guys did, by some weird twist of happenstance, manage to get that reference, please let me know, because then I'll just make more weird, off the wall, and obscure ones. I've got lots of them.
Until then, see you
Hello,
next time.
everybody.